Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. Actually, the Bordens received only 29 whacks, not the 81 suggested by the famous child's song. But the popularity of the above poem is a testament to the public's fascination with the 1893 murder trial of Lizzie Borden. The source of that fascination might lie in the almost unimaginable, brutal nature of the crime given, the sex, the background, and the age of the defendant, or the jury's acquittal of Lizzie in the face of prosecution evidence that most historians today find very compelling.
Hey guys, I'm Tiffany, better known as Daphne.
And I'm Stephanie, better known as Velma.
And we are Southern Sisters of Spirits. We are here with another video today, our Halloween edition. And Fred and Shaggy dropped Velma, Scooby, and I off from the Mystery Machine to the SOS studio.
Yeah, we're so glad to be here, guys. We are super stoked to bring you this story tonight. I think we left Scooby's snacks back in the van, but I think he can get through it.
I think he can.
Yeah, that's okay, Scooby. We
We'll
love you.
fill him up later.
We'll fill him up later.
So guys, before we get started, we just want to remind everyone to please like and share the video if you like it and want to share it. Subscribe for more true crime content every week, and it's absolutely free. And guys, nothing is free but this. If you can do that, we would absolutely appreciate it. We also want to give a little shout out to SoFly. SoFly! We're going to play a little video for you now.
This is how.
Okay, guys, we hope you enjoyed that video.
Scooby's acting up. He's wanting one of them snacks.
Guys, we're sorry. We don't know if we can keep him calm today. So,
SoFly is actually a small family-owned business here in the Houston area who does specializing in accessories with embroidery, lasering, and they do those things on keychains, caps, hoodies, beanies, any type of accessory that you would need. And what it does is makes an ordinary occasion even more special by personalizing it. So again, just reach out to them, and from here we will move forward with the story. Thank you. Here we are again, fitting ourselves back into that time machine. Actually, I've brought along a few for all of you, and we're going to cruise back on down to the year 1892. This is a long trip, so let's break out our colors because, as we all know, I see this time in black and white. As you all have figured out by now, we're going to talk about Lizzie Andrew Borden today. She was born on July 19th, 1860 to Sarah Anthony Borden and Andrew Jackson Borden in Fall River, Massachusetts. Lizzie's mother, Sarah, passed away while Lizzie was still very young. Fall River, Massachusetts had a diverse population of 83,026 people in 1892. For much of its history, the city of Fall River, Massachusetts has been defined by the rise and fall of its cotton textile industry. The President of the United States in 1892 was Benjamin Harrison, and he was the 23rd President of the United States. In the 1890s, popular pastimes in the United States included a variety of activity. People often enjoyed outdoor activities such as picnics, fairs, and baseball games. Baseball was particularly popular with many local teams and leagues providing entertainment for their communities. Reading was another favorite pastime, with many people enjoying novels, newspapers, and magazines. The late 19th century saw a rise in literacy rates and the availability of printed material. Theater shows were also popular forms of entertainment. These performances offered a mix of comedy, music, and drama, attracting audiences of all ages. But little did this large community know that soon a new pastime would creep in like a thief in the night and grip their innocence, sweeping the city into a horrific state of frantic. Did they ever truly know the people amongst them? So, we're going to take a quick break before we move forward with the story. And we're going to let you know about our Etsy store, and it's called SOS Studio Shop. And we have a different variety of caps in there with our logos, and they are great to wear on a rainy day. If it's cold outside, if it's humid, bad hair day, or if you just want to look cute. So here's a little video to kind of show you what we got going on.
All right, guys, we hope you enjoyed that video. Please go and check it out. You know, Christmas is coming soon, so keep us in mind.
Thank you. All right, so we'll continue. On a hot August 4th, 1892, at 92nd Street in Fall River, Massachusetts, Bridget Maggie Sullivan, the maid in the Borden family residence, rested in her bed after having washed the outside windows. She heard the bell at City Hall ring and looked at her clock. It was 11 o'clock. A cry from Lizzie Borden, the younger of the two Borden daughters, broke the silence. Maggie, come down. Come down quick. Father's dead. Somebody came in and killed him. A half hour or so later, after the body, almost beyond recognition, of Andrew Borden had been covered and the downstairs searched by police for evidence of an intruder. A neighbor who had come to comfort Lizzie, Adele Churchill, made a grisly discovery on the second floor of the Borden home: the body of Abby Borden, Lizzie's stepmother. Investigators found Abby's body cold, while Andrew's had been discovered warm, indicating that Abby was killed earlier, probably at least 90 minutes earlier than her husband. So, who was Andrew and Abby? Well, they were actually Lizzie's father and stepmother. So, Lizzie's father, Andrew, was something of a local celebrity in the Fall River, Massachusetts community. He was an eighth generation high society man who came from a wealthy line but didn't inherit any of his wealth. His father was a fish peddler, but Andrew, wanting to go in a different direction, took to carpentry. Andrew eventually prospered in the manufacture and sale of furniture and caskets, then became a successful property developer. He was a director of several textile mills and owned considerable commercial property. He was also president of the Union Savings Bank and a director of the Dufee Safe Deposit and Trust Company. At the time of his murder, his estate was valued at $300,000, or $10 million in the year of 2024. Despite his wealth, Andrew was known for his frugality. For instance, the Borden's residence lacked indoor plumbing, even though it was a common feature for the wealthy at that time. The house stood in an affluent area, but the wealthiest residents of Fall River, including Andrew's cousins, generally lived in more of a fashionable neighborhood in the Hill, which was farther from the industrial areas of the city. Lizzie's stepmother, Abby Borden, by all accounts was a sweet lady who tried really hard to have a good relationship with Lizzie and her sister Emma. But tension had been growing within the Borden family in the months before the murders, especially over Andrew's gifts of real estate to various branches of Abby's family. After their stepmother's sister received a house, the sisters demanded and received a rental property, the home they had lived in until their mother died, which they purchased from their father for $1. A few weeks before the murders, they sold the property back to their father for $5,000, or $170,993 in the year of 2024. The night before the murders, John Morse, Lizzie and Emma's maternal uncle, visited and was invited to stay for a few days to discuss business matters with Andrew, leading to speculation that their conversation, particularly about property transfer, may have aggravated an already tense situation. Under the headline, Shocking Crime, a vulnerable citizen and his aged wife hacked to pieces in their home, the Fall River Herald reported that news of the Borden murder spread like wildfire, and hundreds poured into 2nd Street, where for years Andrew J. Borden and his wife had lived in happiness. The Herald reporter who visited the crime scene described the face of the dead man as sickening. Over the left temple, a wound 6 by 4 inches wide had been made as if it had been pounded with a dull edge of an axe. The left eye had been dug out with a cut extended the length of his nose. The face was hacked to pieces and the blood had covered the man's shirt. Despite the gore, the room was in order and there were no signs of scuffle of any kind. Initial speculation as to the identity of the murderer, the Fall River Herald reported, centered on a Portuguese laborer who had visited the Borden's home earlier in the morning and asked for the wages due to him, only to be told by Andrew Borden that he had no money and to call later. The story added that medical evidence suggested that Abby Borden was killed by a tall man who struck the woman from behind. 2 days after the murder, papers began reporting evidence that 33-year-old Lizzie Borden might have something to do with her parents' murders. Most significantly, Eli Bentz, a clerk at S.R. Smith's drugstore in Fall River, told police that Lizzie visited the store that day before the murder and attempted to purchase prussic acid, a deadly poison. A story in the Boston Daily Globe reported rumors that Lizzie and her stepmother never got along together peacefully, and that for a considerable time back they had not spoken, but noted also that family members insisted relations between the two women were quite normal. The Boston Herald, meanwhile, viewed Lizzie as above suspicion. From the consensus of opinion, it can be said in Lizzie Borden's life there is not one unmaidenly nor a single deliberately unkind act. Police came to the conclusion that the murders must have been committed by some within the Borden home, but were puzzled by the lack of blood anywhere except on the bodies of the victims and their inability to cover any obvious murder weapon. Suspicion turned toward Lizzie since her eldest sister, Emma, was out of the home at the time of the murders. Investigators found it odd that Lizzie knew so little of her mother's whereabouts after 9 a.m., when, according to Lizzie, she had gone upstairs to put shams on the pillows. They also found unconvincing her story that during the 15 minutes in which Andrew Borden was murdered in the living room, Lizzie was out in the backyard in the barn looking for irons, lead sinkers for an upcoming fishing excursion. The barn loft where she said she looked revealed no footprints in the dusty floor, and the stifling heat in the loft seemed likely to discourage anyone from spending more than a few minutes searching for equipment that would not be used for days. Theories about a tall male intruder were reconsidered, and one leading physician explained that hacking is almost a positive sign of a deed by a woman who is unconscious of what she is doing. Wow. On August 9th, an inquest into the Borden murders was held in the courtroom over police headquarters. Before criminal magistrate Josiah Blaisdell, District Attorney Hosea Knowlton questioned Lizzie Borden, Bridget Sullivan, household guest John Morse, and others. During her 4-hour examination, Lizzie gave confused and contradictory answers. 2 days later, the inquest adjourned, and the police chief, Hillard, arrested Lizzie Borden. The next day, Lizzie entered a plea of not guilty to the charges of murder and was transported by rail car to the jail in Taunton, 8 miles to the north of Fall River. On August 22nd, Lizzie returned to Fall River courtroom for her preliminary hearing, at the end of which Judge Josiah Blaisdell pronounced her probably guilty and ordered her to face a grand jury and possibly charges for the murder of her parents. In November, the grand jury met. After first refusing to issue an indictment, the jury reconvened and heard new evidence from Alice Russell, a family friend who stayed with the two Borden sisters in the days following the murders. Russell told grand jurors that she had witnessed Lizzie Borden burning a blue dress in a kitchen fire, allegedly, because, as Lizzie explained her action, it was covered with old paint. Coupled with the earlier testimony from Bridget Sullivan that Lizzie was wearing a blue dress on the morning of the murders, the evidence was enough to convince grand jurors to indict Lizzie for the murders of her parents. Russell's testimony was also enough to convince the Borden sisters to sever all ties with their old friend forever. The trial of Lizzie Borden opened on June 5, 1893, in the New Bedford courthouse before a panel of 3 judges. A high-powered defense team, including Andrew Jennings and George Robinson, the former governor of Massachusetts, represented the defendant, while District Attorney Knowlton and Thomas Moody argued the case for the prosecution. Before a jury of 12 men, Moody opened the state's case. When Moody carelessly threw Lizzie's blue frock on the prosecution table during his speech, it revealed the skulls of Andrew and Abby Borden. The sight of her parents' skulls, according to the newspaper account, caused Lizzie to fall into a fit that lasted for several minutes, sending a thrill of excitement through the awestruck spectators and causing unfrayed embarrassment and discomfort to penetrate the ranks of counsel. For most of the 2 hours of Moody's speech, Lizzie watched from behind a fan as the prosecutor described Lizzie as the only person having both the motive and the opportunity to commit the double murders, and then pulled from a bag the head of the axe he claimed Lizzie used to kill her parents. The first several witnesses for the state testified concerning events in and around the Borden home on the morning of August 4th, 1892. The most important of these witnesses, 26-year-old Bridget Sullivan, testified that Lizzie was the only person she saw in the home at the time her parents were murdered, though she provided some consolation to the defense when she said that she had not witnessed during her over 2 years of service to the family signs of the rumored ugly relationship between Lizzie and her stepmother. Everything was pleasant, she said. Lizzie and her mother always spoke to each other. Other prosecution witnesses disputed Sullivan's assertion that all was fine between Lizzie and her stepmother. For example, Hannah Gifford, who made a garment for Lizzie a few months before the murders, described a conversation in which Lizzie called her stepmother a mean, good-for-nothing thing and said, "I don't have much to do with her. I stay in my room most of the time." Sullivan also testified that Andrew and Abby Borden experienced stomach pains on the day before the murder and told jurors that at the presumed time of Abby's murder, Lizzie claimed she was washing outside the windows. Sullivan testified that she opened the door for Andrew Borden after he returned home from his walk around town, and then described hearing Lizzie's cry for help a few minutes after 11 o'clock. Several witnesses described seeing Andrew Borden at various points in town in the 2 hours before he returned home to his death. Household guest John Morse, age 60, described having breakfast in the Borden home on the morning of the murders and then leaving the house to perform chores. The next set of witnesses described events and conversations after discovery of the murders. Dr. Seabury Bowen, the Borden family physician, summoned to the home by Lizzie in the late morning of August 4th, recounted Lizzie's story about looking for sinkers in the barn and her contention that her father's troubles with his tenants probably had something to do with the murders. On cross-examination, Seabury agreed with the defense's suggestion that the morphine he prescribed for Lizzie might account for some of the confused and contradictory testimony she gave at the inquest following the murders. Adele Churchill and Borden neighbors and another important witness remembered Lizzie wearing a light blue dress with a diamond figure on it, but did not recall seeing any blood spots on it. John Fleet, the assistant marshal of Fall River, recalled his interview with Lizzie shortly after the murder. Lizzie corrected him, he testified, when he called Abby Borden her mother. "She was not my mother, sir," Lizzie replied. "She was my stepmother. My mother died when I was a child." The most compelling testimony came again from Alice Russell. Russell described a visit from Lizzie the night before the murders in which she announced that she would soon be going on a vacation and felt that something is hanging over me. I cannot tell what it is. Then, according to Russell, after describing her parents' severe stomach sickness, which she attributed to bad baker's bread, Lizzie revealed, I feel afraid something's going to happen. Explaining her feeling, Lizzie told Russell that she wanted to go to sleep with one eye half open and that she had fear that somebody might burn the house down or hurt her father because he was so discourteous to people. Turning his questioning to the Sunday after the murders, District Attorney Moody asked Russell about the dress burning incident. Russell recounted that when she asked Lizzie what she was doing with the blue dress, she replied, I'm going to burn this old thing up. It is covered with paint. On cross-examination, defense attorney George Robinson attempted through his questions to suggest that a guilty person seeking to destroy incriminating evidence would be unlikely to do it in such an open fashion as Lizzie allegedly did. Russell also recounted a conversation with Lizzie about a note, which, according to Lizzie's account, she received from a messenger on the morning of the murder, summoning her to visit a sick friend. Lizzie used the note to explain why she thought her mother had left the home and therefore didn't think to look for her body after discovering her father's. Despite a thorough search of the Borden home, the alleged note never was found. Russell said she sarcastically suggested to Lizzie that her mother might have burned the note. Lizzie, according to Russell, replied, yes, she must have. A newspaper account of the prosecution case linked it to the pigeon shooting match in which District Attorney Moody kept flinging up the birds and defying his antagonistic ways to hit them, while the ex-governor defense attorney Robinson constantly fired and often, but by no means always, wounded or brought them down. Robinson's performance impressed reporters, with one writing that the ex-governor is certainly without equal in the New York City as a cross-examiner. Robinson seemed ready to turn more or less to his own account. Nearly every government witness, according to one trial reporter. The defense made its case using, for the most part, the state's own witnesses. There has never been a trial so full of surprises, wrote one reporter covering the trial, with such marvelous contradictions given by witnesses called for a common purpose. The defense kept hammering at the contradictory testimony of key prosecution witnesses. The defense also explored holes in the prosecution's case, where the defense asked, is the handle that supposedly broke off from the axe head that the status hauled into the court and claimed was a part of the murder a weapon? The state had no answer. The defense also exploited the government's own timeline, which allowed from 8 to 13 minutes between Andrew Borden's murder and Lizzie's call to Bridget Sullivan. Robinson tried to suggest the difficulty of washing blood off one's persons, clothes, and murder weapon of blood, and then hiding the murder weapon, all within the short span of time. The decisive moment in the trial might have been when the three-judged panel ruled that Lizzie Borden's inquest testimony, full of contradictions and implausible claims, could not be submitted into evidence by the prosecution. The judges concluded that Lizzie, at the time of the coroner's inquest, was for all practical purposes a prisoner charged with 2 murders, and that her testimony at the inquest, made in the absence of her attorney, was not voluntary. Lizzie should have been warned, the judges said, that she had the right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to remain silent. The judges rejected the state's argument that Lizzie was only a suspect, not a prisoner, at the time of the inquest, and that any way her statement would be admitted because it was in the nature of a denial rather than a confession. The prosecution rested its case on June 14th after one final defeat. The state wanted to have druggist Eli Bentz recount the jury his story of Lizzie Borden visiting a Fall River drugstore on the day before the murders and asking for 10 cents worth of prussic acid, a poison. With the jurors excused, each leaving the courtroom with a palm leaf fan and ice water, the state tried to establish through medical experts, druggists, Führers, and chemists the quantities, properties, and uses of prussic acid. The judges, after listening to the state's foundational case, concluded that the evidence should be excluded. The defense presented only a handful of witnesses. Charles Gifford and Uriah Kirby reported seeing a strange man near the Borden house around 11 o'clock on the night before the murders. Dr. Benjamin Hanfey testified that he saw a pale-faced young man on the sidewalk near 92nd Street around 10:30 on August 4th. A plumber and a gas fitter testified that in the day or two before the murders, they had been in the Borden's barn loft, casting doubt on police assertions that Lizzie's alibi was suspect because dust in the loft appeared undisturbed.
They're trying to bring this poison in, but they weren't poisoned.
No. Well, they're trying to say that she was trying to kill them.
I understand that, but they can't say, well, she beat him to death with the axe because she bought poison.
Right.
You can't do that.
Right. Well, maybe she's trying to kill rats or something. You know?
Yeah, you can't do
Mhm.
that.
I agree.
That's not how they were murdered.
No. Drastically different.
Yeah.
Emma Borden, the older sister of Lizzie, was the defense's most anticipated witness. Emma testified that Lizzie and her father enjoyed a good relationship. She told jurors that the gold ring found on the middle finger of Andrew Borden's body was given to him 10 or 15 years ago by Lizzie, and he prized it highly. Emma also insisted that relations between Lizzie and her stepmother were cordial, even as she admitted to lingering resentment over the transfer by her father of a Fall River home, which Emma called grandfather's house, to Abby and her sister. The defense also hoped that Emma might testify that the Bordens had a custom of disposing of remnants and pieces of dresses by burning, but the court ruled the evidence inadmissible. Summoning up for the defense, A.V. Jennings argued there is not one particle of direct evidence in this case from beginning to end against Lizzie. There is not a spot of blood. There is not a weapon that they have connected with her in any way, shape, or fashion. Following Jennings, Governor Robinson, in his closing speech for the defense, insisted that the crime must have been committed by a maniac or a devil, not by someone with respectable background as his client. He said that the state had failed to meet its burden of proving guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and that it was physically impossible for Lizzie, without the help of a Confederate, to have committed the crime within the timeline suggested by the prosecution. Robinson ridiculed the theory that Lizzie might have avoided getting blood spots on her clothes by killing her parents while stark naked, and argued that the murders might well have been committed by an intruder who passed out of the house undetected. After Hosea Knowlton's able summoning up of the prosecution's evidence, Justice Dewey charged the jury. According to one newspaper report, had the judge been the senior counsel for the defense making the closing plea on behalf of the defendant, he could not have had more absolutely pointed out the folly of depending upon circumstantial evidence alone. It was, the newspaper said, a remarkable charge, a plea for the innocent. Justice Dewey told jurors that they should take into account Lizzie's exceptional Christian character, which entitled her to every inference in her favor. The jury deliberated in an hour and a half before returning with its verdict. The clerk asked the foreman of the jury, "What is your verdict?" "Not guilty," the foreman replied simply. Lizzie let out a yell, sank into her chair, rested her hands on a courtroom rail, put her face in her hands, and then let out a second cry of joy. Soon, Emma, her counsel, and courtroom spectators were rushing to congratulate Lizzie. She hid her face in her sister's arms and announced, "Now take me home. I want to go to the old place and go at once tonight." Papers generally praised the jury's verdict. The New York Times, for example, editorized, "It will be a certain relief to every right-minded man or woman who has followed the case to learn that the jury at Bedford has not only acquitted Ms. Lizzie Borden of the antagonist crime with which she was charged, but has done so with a promptness that was very significant. The Times added that it is considered the verdict a condemnation of the police authorities of Fall River who secured the indictment and have conducted the trial. Not stopping there, the Times editorialist blasted the vanity of the ignorant and untrained men charged with the detection of crime. In smaller cities, the police in Fall River, the editorial concluded, are the usual inept and stupid and muddle-headed sort that such towns manage to get for themselves. It is probably fair to say that however likely it might be that Lizzie did murder her parents, the prosecution failed to meet its burden of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The state's case rested largely on the argument that it was impossible for anyone else to have committed the crime. For the Borden jury and a few other suspicious actions on Lizzie's part, such as burning a dress, turned out not to be enough for a conviction. Had the defendant been a male, some speculate the jury might have been more inclined to convict. One of the defense's great advantages was that most people in 1893 found it hard to believe that a woman of Lizzie's background could have pulled off such brutal killings. After the trial, Lizzie Borden returned to Fall River, where she and her sister Emma purchased an impressive home on the hill, which they called Maplecroft. Lizzie took an interest in theater, frequently attending plays and often associated with actors, artists, and bohemian types. Emma moved out of Maplecroft in 1905. Lizzie continued to live in Maplecroft until her death. Lizzie was ill in her last year following the removal of her gallbladder. She died of pneumonia on June 1st, 1927, in Fall River at age 66. Funeral details were not published and few attended. 9 days later, Emma, her sister, died from chronic nephritis in a nursing home in New Market, New Hampshire. Having moved to this location in 1923, both for health reasons and to avoid renewed attention following the publication of another book about the murders. The Borden sisters, neither of whom had ever married, were buried side by side in a family plot next to their parents in Oak Grove Cemetery. So that, guys, is the story of Lizzie Borden. So what do you think? Well, let's just say this. And my thinking is I've heard a lot of stories, but no one was seen coming out of that house. As a matter of fact, the front door was locked.
It sounds like to me she's the only person that could have done
She
it,
was the only person that could have done
but
it.
they had nothing to go on. You can't
No.
just say, well, she bought poison the day before,
Mhm.
so
So
that
they
has
got
nothing to
killed
do-
with an axe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, well, we didn't see blood on her dress. Well, sure, maybe she did get naked and kill her parents.
Well, this is one thing. While
But
doing the research, if you're killing someone with an axe, was there any wounds on her hands? Scrapes, bruises?
blood is slippery.
Yes, blood is slippery. So, maybe they couldn't find the end of the axe. They found the head of the axe, but did she have any wounds on her body? Um, the thing with the burning of the dress, that's pretty damning, but they didn't even have proof of that. It
They
was
had
just
no proof of
circumstantial.
anything.
No, it was people saying, "Oh, I saw her burning a dress."
And witnesses are not always the most trustworthy.
Oh, no. And maybe she did that a month ago. Maybe she did a month before the murders.
And they
but
just, oh, well, she
now
did
they
burn a
remember.
dress. Well, Scooby, what do you think?
What do you think, Stevie? Do you think the paint was red? I'd like to know the color
That's
of the
true.
paint. I would like to know the color of the paint splatter that was on Lizzie's dress. See, there's a lot of questions. I mean, I think her and Emma both had issues with the stepmother, and they were convinced that their stepmother married their father for his wealth. They always felt that way. So I think that they had just built up resentment, and Lizzie was willing to take on the crime.
Why not just kill the stepmother? Why the father too?
I think they had gotten mad at him because he had actually signed over property to her family, and it just pissed them off.
Mm.
They had built up resentment because and these are just little things, but they were mad because they had to go to the outhouse during the wintertime, during the summertime, where everybody else in that area had indoor plumbing. So it was little things. Now, I believe it was the summer before that, Emma, her father had paid for, I'm sorry, her father had paid for Lizzie to go to Europe to do some sightseeing and maybe do a few studies over there. So I think she spent a month over in Europe, but typically he wouldn't spend that kind of money. He was extremely frugal. And the girls felt like they deserved better than that. So I think over time, they built up a resentment and they felt entitled. And when you feel entitled and you're not getting what you think you deserve and what you think is rightfully yours, then it can turn deadly.
I'm going to sound tacky, ladies, and y'all are going to get mad at me. But in those times, find a husband to do
Right.
all of these things for you. I'm sure there's
Exactly.
a rich man out there somewhere to take care of their needs and give them a bathroom.
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
because they were of age
yes,
to be married.
yes.
They were still maidens, but they were kind of knocking on what they called an old maid's door back then.
I'm not saying that's the answer now, but for back then,
Hmm. That was your answer.
that's the answer.
Right. But honestly, they can talk about Lizzie being the sweet Christian woman, but it didn't sound like there were a lot of men beating down her door
No.
or Emma's. So maybe they saw something in her that didn't quite draw them to her as the wife type, you know.
Yeah.
So or maybe they realized that she would be hard to please. Men
Maybe
pick up on that really quick.
high
Most
maintenance.
men do. Mhm.
Some men like that
Yeah.
now.
So it's just it's a story that I've always read, and I've watched some different series that they have on it. And it's always intrigued me. I would love to go see the house. It still stands and just go through it.
That'd be cool.
It would be really cool, especially during the fall.
We should do that.
Yeah, it would be really cool. And but guys, let us know what you think. I think Lizzie did it. I really do.
I don't see anyone else that could have.
No, the housemaid was outside. She was cleaning windows. Emma was gone down the street or off visiting someone, and there
The
was
door was
no
locked.
the front door was latched too. The screen door was latched, so the back door was the only one that was open. The maid would have seen someone come in that back door,
Right.
and Lizzie was home.
Yeah.
The only thing that is strange to me is when the stepmother was killed, did she not yell? Did she catch her off guard? And if the maid's outside washing the windows, wouldn't she have heard something? So I find that a little strange, but I'm sure Lizzie was smart enough to make sure that when she did it, the maid wasn't around to be able to hear any type of fighting or tussle and bustle or whatever. So I don't know, but it's questionable. It makes you wonder. But Lizzie did spend the rest of her life as a free woman. And there were no other murders in that town that even came close to something that she would have been accused of.
She got what she wanted.
She got exactly what she wanted.
So why go after someone else?
Yeah, she fared well. Her and her sister received her father's estate, and they were able to move up on the hill with the rest of their family, which who knows what their family really thought of them. But they did live quietly, and from my understanding, they would have big parties and invite people over. But Lizzie was always kind of standoffish, and she would watch the room. So I don't know. I would not go to a party under those circumstances. I think
Okay,
I'd
but
stay.
if let's say, because I believe she did it. Let's
Mhm.
say I'm an axe murderer.
Mhm.
I'm gonna watch my back because I know what's out
Oh,
there.
hell yeah. For sure.
So yeah, I'm gonna stand there like watch the room.
Stay in my house, have all the parties, and
That's
keep
right.
my back against the wall.
That's right.
Very
That's
true.
how you do it.
Yeah. So, well, guys, let us know what you think. And we will be bringing you another Halloween special edition really soon. We're super excited, but please leave some comments and let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
So until next time,
See the good and stay in perfectly perfect. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.